And welcome back. It's time to talk about health, and this time it's infertility. Infertility is a deeply personal yet often stigmatized issue that affects millions of individuals and couples across the world. In many African societies, the pressure to conceive can be overwhelming, with women often bearing the brunt of societal expectations and judgment. But infertility is not just a women's issue. It's a medical condition that requires awareness, education, and access to the right solution. Today on Extra Special, we are shining a light on this important conversation, and we will explore the myths surrounding infertility, the medical advancements that are making a difference, and the real-life journeys of those who have worked this path.
So joining us in this conversation is Adeola Olunloyo. She's a fertility educator who has dedicated her career to empowering individuals with knowledge and also options. Also with us is Damilola Anwo-Ade, a mother of triplets, and she's a teachpreneur who will share, or rather techpreneur. Teachpreneur would have been the other one. She's going to share her personal journey through infertility and also how she's using technology to support others on a similar path. So, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you
ladies
so much.
And ladies. I'll let our other lady take charge.
I must, again, ladies, thank you so much for joining us. I must start with the biggest misconception, which is that infertility is mostly affected by women.
Precisely.
Let's start there.
Yes,
misconceptions.
Yes, it's a big one. We all know that it takes two to tango.
Say that again for the back.
And to make a baby, it takes a man and a woman. But because the woman is the one who gets pregnant, people sometimes forget the huge contribution that men, make for pregnancy to occur. But when there's no pregnancy, automatically, when many people look first at the woman without looking at the man in terms of who could be the cause of the problem.
So how you looked at me there for a glance, just like
she might be shooting blanks.
I know, right? So yeah, that's a big
and
one.
so how then should couples then seek? What's the first step, right, to finding solutions? When do you know that there's a problem?
Okay, medically, it's defined as after 1 year of having unprotected sex, right? But the first step for anyone, whether you're married or not, is knowledge. Many of us don't even know our bodies. Many women or men don't know what are the normal parameters for your menstrual cycle, for instance, for your sexual performance, or whether you're ejaculating or not ejaculating or performing well and things like that. So I would say the first step for everyone is to be adequately knowledgeable, because there's so much misinformation flying around. Be careful the sources of the information that you're consuming, because if you want to learn more about fertility, you must make sure it's the right sources. Your medical health provider, for instance, your gynecologist or a fertility consultant, needs to be the one that gives you the right information. And of course, if you're going online, make sure it's credible sources like WHO or people who are certified professionals in that area.
Yes, indeed. Let me come to you and ask you this question and just talk about, the key medical lifestyle factors that contribute to infertility. What should couples seek? What should couples look out for when it comes to, treatments for infertility?
So I think the first thing for couples is to have a conversation with themselves. What's going on? Are we doing it the right way? There are times when you're supposed to be eating. All those basic conversations. Sometimes it seems like it's so basic for them to do that, but they usually don't because of how sensitive it has become in our society. And then after that, of course, seeking medical help, going straight to your hospital and finding out if you could see a gynae, and then they'll walk you through a process. So infertility or just challenges getting pregnant does take a process. There's a lot of investigations that happen in between before you get from zero to holding your baby. So it's very important that you go through all the investigations, you check the woman and the man. Sometimes it's difficult to also bring our men to the table and to having those conversations before you even, so sometimes you see that you're struggling with getting your husband or your spouse or your partner to get into a hospital to just do a basic medical evaluation. But it's just important that both parties realize how important it is to have those conversations early. and make sure they just run the general tests that their medical professionals will ask for.
Right. I mean, I must ask, Damilola, you are mother of triplets, right? And so, would you mind sharing your journey with us? Was it a battle of infertility? Was it a journey of infertility to a birth of triplet? What was that like for you, if you don't mind sharing?
Okay, so I was married for 9 years before my triplets came, and it was a struggle. So like every woman now, or most women now, I made the decision to go to school, do my master's, build my business, build my career, even after I got married. And so, of course, that delayed even the plan to having kids. I was like, okay, do you know what? We're going to wait 5 years. And 5 years came and we were ready. And, my body wasn't ready to, behave. And so I had to go through a journey of asking questions, trying physically at home together before we went in. And so in between all that, I went through 3 IVF cycles. I had a miscarriage, and it's interesting because even the miscarriage didn't get me down. It was the second IVF cycle that was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. It was literally bordering on my mental health. It was a really stressful process. In between all that, I don't even think my father has heard me cry that much before. And so, it was just a journey. It was an emotional journey that I know a lot of women are going through. That's why I speak about it a lot and often to encourage people. And so, it was in the third IVF that my kids showed up. And I remember going to my doctor and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. It was just before my birthday. And I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to come. I'm just telling you heads up that we're just going to freeze this process and then move on. And he said, Damilola, I'm not going to allow you not to do it. Come here next week and let's get this thing done. And that was the cycle that brought my 3 beautiful girls. And so, grateful for, caring health professionals that got me through the entire process. But yeah, that was my journey. It was a 9-year journey. My girls are 2.5 years this year, 3 this year, and just excited to have gone through it. And happy that it came out positive.
I really wish we had pictures of them just rolling in the as B-roll so I could see their pretty faces. But again, they're children. We have to protect their privacy. But congratulations on the girls and happy birthday to them. But let me come back to the studio here and talk to you, Adeola, and just talk about there's another side of infertility that we normally don't see and we normally don't talk about, which is secondary infertility. Yes. Tell me about it.
Well, we have a pronatal society. We love children in Africa and in Nigeria in particular. So many people sometimes shame couples who have like 1 kid.
Tell me about it.
Oh yes, they'll say, what are you doing with 1 kid? When are you having more?
Oh, I'm telling you that's my story.
Oh, you see? And people look at you and just generally assume.
No, but you chose not to have another child.
Yeah, the choice.
And that's very empowering, right? Because some people also think that it's weird for you to decide that you want to have 1 kid. So when it comes to fertility, I think the first takeaway for all of us to learn is to allow people make their informed choices in terms of what they want, their choices, and what they can live with, right? But when it comes to secondary infertility, many people don't also understand that some couples may be struggling, really struggling to have more children, and they can't. So I authored 2 books recently in November.
All in November or another one in November?
I have 2 books that I authored on fertility education that I'm using to drive.
I wanted to go back to perhaps what suggestions you could give for people. It's a very important conversation regarding people who have just 1 kid and how society actually views them. What can they do, or how can they manage these situations?
Okay.
I'm asking for myself.
You're asking? Oh, but you said it's your choice.
Yes, but then again, I still get these people ask these very worrying questions.
It's continuing investigation to understand what is the cause. And one of the things we also need to know is that there is something called unexplained infertility. Sometimes they check the man, they investigate the man, investigate the woman, and there's actually nothing wrong, but pregnancy isn't taking place. So when that happens, the couple again are advised by their medical team on what choices or options they may have.
Right. I mean, you talked about choices, right? But let's talk about the journey to healing. And I'm going to come to you, Damilola, for this one, right? The journey to healing. For your case, you went through rounds of IVF. That must have taken a toll. Talk to me about the emotional toll in search of fertility.
I think one of the first things when it comes to the emotional toll is you don't know who to talk to. You don't know who, there's no medical professional. You're thinking about who are the friends and family I can trust. And so that was like one of the biggest ones because you just don't want to have these conversations that you know are not going to be private. And it's also mentally a struggle for you, right? And so I had to make a decision to, just keep my circle thin. And I had a medical professional in my circle and my best friend. And just having those conversations because it was weighing mentally on me. I remember at one time, because of the emotional toll, my mom would always come and my parents, and just family, just wanting to pray and pray in front of you and wanting to, let this happen, let that happen. And I sat back one day and said, these prayers, these public prayers are not making me feel better. That once they're over, I go into a mental space of when, how, just start asking myself questions. And so I had to tell them, you know what, I love you. But please, can you keep these prayers to your room? I know you're praying for me, but I don't want your anxiety to become my anxiety. And so I think the last one I want to talk about quickly was, knowing when to, recognize that these issues are giving you that kind of pressure. And so I had to start recognizing the kind of situations that were triggering and saying, you know what, I'm not avoiding the situation. I'm happy to have my kids around. But if there were certain things that would trigger me, like for example, there was a conversation in between all that where somebody had left his wife that wasn't able to have a child. And this story came to me and it triggered me for months. I couldn't sleep. It was worrisome. And so, I had to tell myself, you know what, my social media feed I needed to streamline that. I wasn't going to allow such conversations to, affect my space and my heart. And I think it's also important that people going through these challenges have to recognize how to guard their hearts. And lastly, I know that men also struggle with, when, there's no baby in the home, when kids don't come. And so I had to recognize that it wasn't a struggle I was going through alone. It was a struggle that we were both going through together. And so having those conversations are also helpful as well as partners.
I'm glad you're saying this because you talked about something. You said as much as you accepted the prayers of your family, of your members of your family, you didn't want to buy into the anxiety, right? And so as much as we want to feel supported and have a community, their yearning and the desire for an answered prayer sometimes push people over the edge. And that means suggesting paths or solutions or healing processes that could be harmful. Was that your case?
Absolutely. I remember there was one specific prayer that I always remember, and it was that prayer, you will not be barren, you will not be barren. And for some reason, it was having a completely different effect. And, it's just important to know that we know you love us, we know that you understand, you recognize that it's a challenge to be in a situation of infertility, but it's important as people that are watching people they love in that process, it's important to not bring your anxiety to their table. So in all this conversation about reaching out, a particular friend reached out from another West African country, and it was every time they visit their father-in-law, he would, ask, huge questions on the dining table. And it's just important that our culture also learns to be respectful of people's, challenges and not feeling as if it needs to be on the dining table and as a for public consumption of the entire family.
Thank you for that. Let me come into the studio.
Hang on a second, Joseph.
Yeah,
Just a
go
second. I
ahead.
have a very important question here I have to ask regarding infertility and the worry of menopause. Because most people who struggle with infertility would often, they don't bother about getting help until, some would say until it's too late. But when is it too late for a woman? And I know that we have other factors when it comes to men as well, but for most people, the present worry is menopause. So how can you assuage fears regarding menopause and the approaching menopause for most women?
I would
extend that response beyond menopause.
Please.
Because for a woman's fertility cycle or fertility window, a woman is most fertile and has a fertility peak in her 20s. By the time she gets to 30, fertility starts to decline. And then by the time she gets to 35, it starts to dip lower significantly. So a woman's ability to produce viable eggs starts to drop significantly in terms of quality and quantity when she's 35. So one of the ways or things we're trying to create awareness about is making timely and informed reproductive choices. Because for instance, I went through 3 IVF when I was 42.
42?
Yeah, and by the time I started at 42, which I started unintentionally because I was dealing with some medical issues that I wanted to get out of the way, that made me confront my situation because I was single and I didn't have kids, and I'm like, okay, I'm considering having a hysterectomy. How about let me try and have a baby? And then my doctor told me, you're too late. Why are you talking about freezing your eggs or going down this path at 42? And I'm like, tell me more. And then I started to unravel a lot of things about a woman's cycle.
Tell us more.
So I mean, I'm on this mission because of my lived experience, which is what I've just shared with you. And this happened almost 3 years ago, right? And it opened.
You do not look a day over 30. You are a beautiful woman. I have my jaw on the floor.
Thank you. And
Oh
that's one big myth. I went in with a lot of confidence, like, oh, I look young, I take care of myself, I exercise, I eat well, I'm going to pop out eggs anyhow I want. And then I got a rude shock when I went through the cycles and we didn't get viable eggs. So I got just one that became viable.
Explain this process, viable eggs. I'm so sorry, I'm so interested.
No. It's
Yes.
very, very important because I went in there with a lot of misinformation and a lot of assumptions. And it opened my eyes to realize that, oh my God, I've missed my time.
Viable eggs at 42 would
Mean good eggs,
Good eggs
that can be fertilized
with
to,
the sperm
to become a baby.
Okay.
Right?
So is it that as you age, you are unable to produce viable eggs?
That's
But
what-
you would be able to produce eggs, but not all of them are viable.
Exactly, because that was what happened to me. And then I made a resolve that I need to create more awareness to women to know, because we're all pursuing our careers. We're all aspiring to become something. We're in a generation where we're delaying marriage and motherhood. But our biology is not being delayed.
Yeah.
Biology is biology, and our timelines are limited, right? And that was the biggest lesson I came out of, to say, do things at the right time. If anyone had told me I could freeze my eggs 10 years before, I would have gladly done it because I had access, I could afford it. But I didn't know. I was just busy living life and putting aside my goal of becoming a mother till when I get married. And that's what society programs us to do as women, especially in Nigeria. And I'm saying we need to begin to have these conversations because many of us are having sisters, daughters, friends who are like me, right? They're doing excellently well in every area of their lives, but they're not married. And because they're not married, they're not considering motherhood. And by the time they are now ready, it may be too late.
Might I just add here, right? You said something.
Yes.
You're doing ridiculously well in all aspects of your life, and what's just not happening is the marriage.
Yes.
So you have access
Yes.
to be able to have that option. But what about women who wants this but don't have the access
So that's a different.
to the finances to finance it?
Yes.
Let's talk about democratizing healthcare. Fertility healthcare. for women.
Absolutely. One of the things I'm also advocating for is equitable access to fertility care and treatment, because it should not be it should not be a service only for the rich and only for those who can afford it. And that's where government and organizations come in. How many organizations are providing health insurance, for instance, to women? There are many sectors like banking, like engineering, like oil and gas, like the military that have grueling work hours and demands on women and making women
You
delay.
forgot media. I forgot to
Even the media
thank
and
you.
entertainment. Thank you for reminding me. Media
Top of
and
the list.
entertainment. So because we're having more women stepping into these roles and playing fantastic roles and doing excellently well, we need to ensure that employers are also aware that this is an incentive that you can provide to women, your female staff who are not yet married, but who are like 35 or considering freezing their eggs. that provision should be given to them if you can afford it.
What's the cap to doing that? I know that the times have changed, inflation is biting hard, and every sector is struggling to stay afloat. But if one was to take on this journey, what would be an advice, for women, do they start now? What is the best age to start, and how much should you be looking to put in your bank account?
In terms of them affording it?
Yeah, affording.
It depends, because you have different facilities and different costs associated with it. It would be wrong for me to give a specific figure, but this is something you can easily...
or a range.
We're talking about millions, but millions in terms of maybe range between 1 to 3 million, depending. Why I'm being careful is people go in with different medical conditions, because you just don't go in and then they freeze your eggs. They have to also assess you, know your status, before they recommend what it is or how they're going to go about it. But I would say government with health insurance, the health insurance currently are not providing that support. So we need that conversation.
Democratizing is really important.
When it comes to Dami here, Dami, I'm wondering what your story was regarding finding out who exactly to go to for these procedures, because there's so many. Instagram makes it easy for people to advertise, and you don't know who's authentic or who's not. How challenging is it for people who are going through these circumstances to actually find real help, proper help that is affordable but yet very, very valuable, I mean in terms of getting results?
And you're completely right. It is challenging, and it's challenging because of social media, because of the various options really out there. I remember some of the options that were sent to me was traditional medicine, friends and family asking me to go and see someone in one dingy mall at one corner of the town. There were a lot of options being thrown at me, but I went straight to I went to a certified hospital, and I started with my general doctor, and I said, this is the challenge, and he said, you know what, let's get you to see a gynae. They went to the gynecologist, and then he did some assessments. And after that, I said, you know what, I think you're going to have to remove your fibroids. And so just following the medical process, but making sure you start with a certified hospital. And so, Instagram is fantastic for getting information, but it's not good for it's not the information you need medically. You need a medical professional to take a look at you. If you want motivation, sure. But if you're really looking at understanding what your personal challenges are, because everybody's body, like Adeola said, are very different. And she speaks a lot about this in her book, What's the Right Pathway to Getting Through Fertility or Infertility Issues. But yes, start with a certified hospital. And in terms of access to resources to be able to go through IVF, they're like absolutely true. It's such a huge challenge. It was a challenge for us, and it was actually one of the reasons why we didn't go on the journey too early. But I also want to say to couples that are looking to have their kids is that don't feel like you need to have all the money at once. IVF is a process, and so it's important to first go for your first checkup, find out what it is you're dealing with, and then budget and continue to save as you go along. Because like we have just mentioned, it's not part of our health insurance for now, but it should be. But really, the first medical tests don't take a huge amount of money. Some of them range from 15,000 to 100, 200,000, like we have just mentioned, depending on, and sometimes those tests take time. You could see that they will wait until a woman's cycle for some of those tests to be able to get the results. So just recognizing that it's a process of time. And so don't feel as if you have to have all your money together first. You might need 15,000 today, 25 tomorrow, 100 tomorrow upwards, but really you don't have to have all your cash at hand to start the process. Just start the process if it's something you really want.
Dami, thank you very much. I'll come back to you in the studio here, Adeola. Now, I mentioned that because of all the risks that people are going through. We also had a report from weeks ago that showed, I think it was a situation in the East where people who are looking for children go to these very dingy places like Dami has just noted, and they're giving children without even evidence of pregnancies, and they even believe the gullibility of it all.
Desperate times.
Exactly. So how can people protect themselves from these desperate people?
the government has a huge role to play here to protect the people from people who are taking advantage of people's vulnerabilities. I would look at it in two ways. You know, the same way we have NAFDAC doing a fantastic job helping to calm down on those that are selling fake drugs. We really need the Ministry of Health and the Medical Council to do their job. We shouldn't have somebody putting a sign of a facility promoting a service that has not been certified and
Even
approved to operate. You know, Instagram is open to everyone, but a physical structure means there has to be clearance, there has to be approval, there has to be checks on the person's certification or training. Where is this person registered? You know, and a consumer or a client won't have the facility to do that. But this person is advertising. Who approved the signboard? Who approved that this person can run a business? The government needs to step up in that regard. And I also want to say that, look, religion is a big issue in this country. I think that we need to really begin to learn to separate the role of religion from the role of science. Because sometimes a lot of us are looking for miracles that do not exist. Do you get what I mean? I think it's okay if you go for a medical assessment and they tell you your status, for you to then work with the result of that status to treat yourself. But when you are given a status or a medical report and then you begin to whip up some sentiment for a miracle, I'm not ruling out the possibility of miracles, but again, miracles are one in 1 million or 1 in 2 million. Do you get what I mean? All the others then need to take practical steps to say, okay, my doctor has given this report. Let me do what I've been asked to do, and then pray that the treatment works.
One of my Christian friends will say that science is a gift of religion and is a gift of God.
Absolutely.
And I would say, you know,
absolutely.
I take it, you know, whatever it is, I take it. But we've talked about women and we've talked about their issues.
Yes.
As we wrap up this conversation, I want you to sound the alarm for men as well.
Yeah.
And also how healthcare professionals and fertility doctors should also sound the alarm for men, especially in our society.
It starts again with our culture. There's a lot of masculinity, you know, there's a lot of toxic masculinity that we're practicing now. If a man has a problem that is related to fertility, please understand that it has nothing to do with your masculinity. It's a medical condition. It doesn't reduce you as a man in terms of your value, in terms of what you're worth. It's just a medical condition that needs to be addressed, because a lot of men confuse sexual performance with fertility. You may be performing excellently, but you have a problem with your sperm, right? And it's the sperm that is needed to fertilize. It's not your fault. It's a medical situation. And I always tell couples, yes, I tell couples, regardless, if you're dealing with infertility, whether it's the woman that has a problem, whether it's the man, you're a couple. What is most important is looking for a solution together. There should be no blame game of, oh, you're the one with no sperm or you're the one with no viable eggs. No, you're taking vows to become one. So what's the way forward? What's the solution? And for many men, please, this is one thing I really want to impress upon them, especially for men who don't have sperm. You can use donor sperm, and it is between you and your wife. It's nobody's business.
Sorry, at the very end, this is becoming very curious. Donor sperm would mean then it's not my DNA then?
It doesn't matter.
It's spoken like a true
culturally or sentimentally.
Again, it's about our mental, how we mentally condition ourselves. A child that is conceived with your wife, right? For instance, in my situation now, maybe my option would be, if I get married, I'm going to use a donor egg with my husband's sperm. If I cannot conceive biologically. So if I carry that child or somebody carries that child, it's my child.
Yeah,
you see it's because we have
culturally conditioned men. That's an issue.
We have that thinking is why
but I don't have a problem.
Is still on it. I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying that thinking, right, that the general populace has, is why the adoption rate is very low.
I agree, absolutely. People still look at it like it's not your biological child. Every child is valuable and every child is a miracle. I'm telling you, when I watched the video of my egg and a sperm being fertilized, I was in awe.
We shouldn't be able to see that, by the way.
No. But I mean, when you look at it, you will understand. You will understand the power of fertilization, because it's not even the doctors who decide what is fertilized. Yeah. It's nature. It's God.
See, listen, I said that with levity, but I am a scientist, like she knows it, and I have seen these things actually interact.
Exactly. So if you have a child, a living child, that's a miracle right there staring you in the face.
It is a miracle.
Yeah.
Adeola, Dami, we want to say thank you very much for sharing your experience with us and also your endeavors. We've really appreciated this very interesting conversation, and we hope that the women out there have actually taken a little lesson from here. And if you're experiencing this, please make sure that you already go get help from very certified institutions.
And might I just add that as you're going to go get help, please do not lean into the anxiety of your community. Yes. Yeah. Do not lean into their yearnings and their desperation. That desperation can lead you to your death. At this point, I would like to say rest in peace to my aunties who on their journey for fertility lost their lives. And that's it. I won't say their names for their privacy. But thank you so much, and stay tuned. There's more on the other side. Don't go anywhere.